Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Scott Edinburgh. I'm the founder of Personal MBA Coach, and we're going to be playing a previously recorded video where I'm interviewing some former clients of mine about their success stories. So very excited to share that. And after the video, we'll come back and answer any questions that you have. So thank you so much for joining.
As safe and healthy as they can these days. For those of you I haven't had the pleasure of meeting, my name is Scott Edinburgh. Whom we're here now. One's going to be joining in about a half hour. So Jamie Marvel from Wharton and Parker Lowe also from Wharton, and then we'll be having another client join from Yale as well. So I'll give a little bit of introduction to myself. I'll sort of talk through some candidate success stories, and then I'll pass on to Jamie and Parker to talk a little bit about their experiences as well. If you have any questions, please just feel free to ask them in the comments. I think there are a couple different places where you can ask questions on YouTube, or if you're on Facebook, feel free to kind of ask there as well. And we'll see how many questions we have. Often these videos are watched delayed, so if you don't have as many questions, then that would be the reason. So a little bit about my background. I went to MIT for undergrad and studied economics and business at Sloan. Was a teaching assistant for one of the MBA courses as an undergrad. Then I worked at Deloitte in consulting for a few years, did mostly mergers and acquisitions work, and I went to Wharton for the MBA. Picked Wharton because when I was in high school, I took a couple summers of economics classes at Wharton, really liked the curriculum, and wanted to go back for the MBA. So went there, loved the experience, and went there. I studied real estate, great real estate program, studied some healthcare. I actually founded Personal MBA Coach when I was a first-year student there. Helped a couple of my good friends with their applications. They had hired other firms to help them with their processes, and ended up sort of improving the the sort of quality and level of detail a bit here. And the first two got into Harvard, and another one got into Wharton, and we just expanded from there. So now 13 years later, I run the company with my sister, who's a former Bain consultant. And we also have some M7 admissions directors on our team as well. I'm on the board of directors for the Association of International Graduate Admissions Consultants. Happy to talk to you about the organization later. We were just talking about our board meeting before this about an applicant fair that we might be having again this year, which will be very exciting. And we do a lot of things with admissions directors. So there's a conference every year with the heads of admissions. We'll even analyze these sort of fake profiles and determine who should get accepted and rejected and why. I tend to do a lot of different talks, not just ones here, but at different events like the Gmat conference, and many different consulting firms who invite us in to go and present. So our clients get in with a 96% success rate, and we had actually over $6 million in scholarships last year. So a little bit more about what we do, and then we'll get into the meat of the presentation. So, what does Personal MBA Coach do? For those of you that are not familiar with us or admissions consulting in general, we help you throughout the entire life cycle of your journey. So you could be in college and watching this, or just graduating. We have what we call early MBA planning programs, which is essentially strategic guidance and advice for how you can improve yourself between now and when you apply. What extracurriculars should you do? Should you join a new organization? Should you start something? Are you in the right job? Are you doing the right things at the right job? Then we have complete GMAT, GRE, and executive assessment tutoring. We have in-house software that we use to guide through the sessions with modules, sample questions, thousands of answers, full-length exams. Our applicants that use our tutoring do extremely well in exams. GMAT on average, they're raising by a little over 90 points, and GRE have kind of similar numbers. And I mentioned some of this before, but we have former M7 interviewers and also top 10 and top 15 interviewers. A lot of people that used to interview at the schools on our team to help, and then former clients to network with at all of the sort of top schools here. Talk a little bit about some sort of success stories. Maybe I'll do one success story, and then I'll go to sort of introduce our clients here today, and then we'll bounce back for some others. So these folks are doing a lot, and often it's kind of articulating some kind of compelling story, some kind of unique story. Now, if anyone wants other advice, so not just success stories, we have a lot of other webinars and videos. So visit our website, www.personalmbacoach.com. We have videos on our homepage. Parker's on our homepage, I believe. And so you can hear other tips, advice on things to do. This is really just focused on success stories from applicants who have done it in the past. So here's candidate one. I kept things a little bit vague, given this is a public video, but GPA was below 3.5, GRE in the 330s, 4 years of experience in consulting, and this was a white female that studied at a top school. So this is sort of the person, and this is not one of our folks here today. This is somebody else. This is sort of the person that you have in mind, right? This image. Now, what were some challenges here? One, previous rejection. So this was not the first time that this person had applied. Kind of a common background, right? If we go back to consulting, common background. So how can we step out and not be just a consultant? And we can actually hear a little bit about that today from some of our folks. And then average stats, lower than 3.5 GPA. I feel like that's not so amazing. And GRE into the 330s, but it was on the lower side, let's say. So some details, right? So we actually focused a lot on art, and I keep a lot of this anonymous. So some of the details might be changed around a little bit just for privacy, but very specific focus. So here, focused on like art and art consulting, passionate about art, kind of growing up with that. So that ends up being an important theme. And then we had to figure out how to work this theme together. And so what's important as you're thinking about working themes together is to what level of detail do you actually have to go into as you're working through a theme. I was talking with a client a few days ago, really wanted to connect everything together. And in this particular instance, I said, it might not actually make the most sense. Your professional details are different from your personal details. And, he also came from an overrepresented, background. And I said, look, let's just keep these two things separate. If you love wine, I love wine and wine tasting. Maybe I'll own a vineyard one day. We'll see. That's sort of one area. And then if you're doing, a totally different line of work, like that's okay, right? But in some cases, we actually move is the wrong word. We kind of meld them together and create this one kind of interesting story. And so that's what we did here. We took the personal and the professional together, and got into booth with $150,000 in scholarships. But the one other success story, and then I'll go to my clients to kind of chat a little bit about their backgrounds. So here's someone else, 4.0 GPA, so clearly did really well. Mid 330s on the GRE, few years of experience, 3-4 years-ish of experience in working in finance. So what do we do here? Some things that were important to focus on were the actual interests. So sports and tutoring, and kind of combining those together. Now, when you think of sports, you might think, okay, so I've done sports. A lot of people have done sports. What is the difference? And for those of you just joining, a brief overview, because I saw the numbers sort of climbing up. So I went to MIT for undergrad, working for my MBA, running personal MBA coach for the last 13 years. And these are a few of the things that we have. You can go back and watch the beginning later, but that's sort of who I am, and my name is Scott. So we had some new joiners. So for this story, if you think about sports and you think about like helping other people and being passionate about people, that can manifest itself in different ways. Like one, it's just mentorship, telling people that they need to, be better, helping people to think through themselves. And then you can also have the thought process behind it. How do people think? How do people want to think? Can you help them to think a little bit better? And so we actually, kind of use those different themes together, even though it feels like it might not be super business school focused. And then we connected people to the consulting goals. And what we did was, in this case, this applicant didn't have a ton of work experience relative to some others, closer to 3 than 4. And so we focused a lot on the leadership roles, and specifically what we did as a leader at the firm and outside of the firm to try to offset some of that lower years of work experience. And this was actually our most successful client last year based on numbers alone. You guys are also equally successful, but got into all 6 schools that this applicant applied to at $550,000 in scholarships. So before we go into success story 3, thoughts, Parker, if you want to start, kick it off, kind of tell us a little bit about yourself and, a couple-minute overview of your experience going through the process with us, and, to what extent you want to talk about your own personal story as well.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Scott. Happy to chat a little bit about my background and experience with you guys. So talking a little bit about my background, I graduated from Caltech in 2018 with a BS in physics, and I pivoted to consulting and worked in the public sector with Deloitte and the State Department for 2 years, bringing analytics to the policy process. And this was, I think, a similar background to a lot of applicants, but also different insofar as it was consulting, but it was public sector, and it was more STEM oriented than business or econ oriented. So business school was something that really hadn't been on my radar as an undergrad, and it was something that had only now eked its way into my consciousness, a year or two after having left undergrad. So I was originally planning to apply now this current fall. So I reached out to Scott in February to start having a conversation about things I could maybe do over the summer to prepare. But as we all know, the world is a very tumultuous place. And as a result, COVID struck, and Scott got back to me and he said, you know what, you should probably just apply right now, round 3. And that, in my opinion, was probably one of the most valuable pieces of advice I could have gotten, because it ended up putting me here at Wharton, and B, Scott had this incredible ability to understand the way that the entire process was going to change and evolve. And the value of that advice to me was just immeasurable. So talking a little bit about the actual tactical things that we worked on in the application process, I would say that there were 3 key components. Number 1, he helped me to refine that unique value proposition that I mentioned before. How do I translate Caltech physics and public sector consulting at the State Department into a story that makes sense for business schools? So I can maybe go back and chat a little bit about that if some more questions come up there. But turning it into a story was very important. And, secondly, taking that story and tailoring it specifically to the different factors and facets that each school wanted, because each school has, very different priorities, and tuning that story to resonate with each school and with each, panel of admissions people that were going to be looking at it, I think is also extremely important. And last but not least, the interview prep, extremely important. And it was great to connect with a lot of other clients of Scott's, because they're all, equally highly motivated people that really, we'd really push each other to prepare as effectively as possible for the interviews, especially the Wharton group interview. And another client of Scott's who I practiced for the Wharton group interview with ended up getting accepted as well, and he and I remain good friends. So a few, I think, takeaways from this whole experience for me. Number 1, earlier is better. If I hadn't reached out to Scott in February thinking that I was going to be starting this process in the fall, I would have missed this window entirely. So the earlier you get involved with Scott, the better. You can have more time to think about your story, more time to work on your Gmat, more time to adapt your strategy based on changing global circumstances. Earlier is absolutely better. Takeaway number 2, just the advice, the feedback, and the confidence that I got from Scott were absolutely worth it, both in terms of improving my application and improving the way I felt about myself and the way I felt about my application. Because without that preparation, I don't think I would have had the confidence to perform as well and come across as strongly as I could have and should have. And finally, and I think most importantly, Scott really acts as a force multiplier. So taking what you put in, multiplying that effort in terms of what you get out. But if you go in and you expect Scott, hey, please write my applications for me, please turn me into a good interviewer and produce a good story for me. It's just not going to happen. It's really on you to do 99% of the work, and on Scott to look at your work and say, this is what you need to change in order to be as effective as you need to be. So it's certainly a big leap in terms of effort and responsibility on your end as a client, but it's something that was absolutely worth the effort. So with that, I'm happy to pass it off or take any questions.
Great. Well, Parker, thanks so much. Really appreciate the kind words here. So we do have one question here. So from Mohammed. And I'll show this here. How do you combine your Caltech experience with work experience and made a cohesive story for business school? Yeah. So I guess maybe you can just talk for another 30, 60 seconds kind of about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I was actually hoping someone was going to ask about this because it was a really fun exercise to do. I knew that the Caltech background was something that was going to be unique for business schools because I think there are actually 3 other people at Wharton currently from Caltech, which is a lot more than I thought there were going to be. But tuning that in a way that made sense to admissions officers was key. And I think the way I was able to achieve this was combining it with my work experience to tell a story about why I needed an MBA in order to make the most of that background. And the angle I ended up pursuing was talking about my goal of becoming a chief data officer. If any of you guys are familiar with the role of a chief data officer, it's essentially a new sort of emerging C-suite position where you have an executive, at a high level who's in charge of like data and analytics for the organization. As organizations become more data driven, it becomes more important to have these types of people in these types of positions, rather than the sort of geriatric executive stereotype that I think a lot of us think of. And this was something that was a perfect fit for my background because, it was clear that Caltech physics gives you a good grasp of STEM concepts and analytics. It was clear that the work I did implementing analytics at the State Department and working with their chief data officer exposed me to that role, made me interested and excited about it, and revealed to me the importance of that role and the effect that I could have in that role. And, it made telling that story very natural and very effective and very well suited for an MBA and for, the value that I would get out of the MBA. Because I think a lot of the importance of the story is telling them why they need to accept you and why you need the education that they provide. And I think it would have been a lot weaker if I said, yeah, I'd like to go into private equity just like everyone else. Check, please. That might have had some element of truth in it, but I don't think it would have been nearly as effective. So just finding those elements in your background that resonate with you and resonate, presumably with the admissions office, I think will dramatically enhance your chances of, success moving down the line.
Super helpful. Thank you so much. And on goals, I know we're not talking about goals today, but also for all the watchers here, you can ask any questions that you want on anything. We talk about a lot of different things in other webinars. Goals are super important, and you don't need to be aggressive in the goals. As Parker said, yes, you can write about venture capital or private equity if you want to, but guess what? It's probably not going to help you to get accepted. And so we often find that tough balance between writing something that's going to feel really, really good for you, and then also going to get you accepted. So we'll go to the next success story, and then we'll come to Jamie afterwards. So here's another applicant, an Indian female, internationally from outside the U.S. 730 Gmat, 3 years of work experience and working in trading, sales and trading type of a role. So what was a challenge? Well, scholarships, right? So scholarships were important, at least getting some sort of money, not necessarily the most money, because we wanted a high school, but at least some sort of money. With kind of average test scores, lighter extracurriculars and limited experience in just 3 years. If anyone wants to talk about really not having much, really not having much experience at all, you can ask something to Parker, who had even lower. But still, 3 is kind of a little bit on the lighter side. So extracurriculars, so we were a STEM major, a lot of focus on healthcare. So here's a picture of, some kind of volunteering in a hospital. The goals are healthcare consulting. And, we had some experiences with like gaps in the healthcare system. So in this case, we did tie together the personal experiences with the professional story, which, I'm using some examples of times when people did that. Not that you have to do that every time, but it makes for a more interesting story to tell. So if you have questions on how to do this, if your stories don't align, let me know. I can tell you about mine, which my personal and professional stories had nothing to do with each other. So what else do we do? We talked about the future career and like passionate about the future career with the thought around the career switch. So why are we switching from like sales and trading to non-sales and trading kind of role. And then we also focused on the willingness to lead here despite being underrepresented. So what we meant by this is here is somebody who, let's say, was not part of the most common group of traders as far as what she looked like or where she was from, but still had a leadership role and talked about how she developed that leadership in an environment that didn't really have a lot of people in support above her. And so what was the final result? We got into Chicago booth and Michigan with over 160,000 and combined scholarships here. And a couple things to note before we go on to Jamie is, this is a challenging year, right? And so for those of you who are applying now and thinking of submitting in round 2, first of all, it's not too late. So Parker's going to start early, which is absolutely the right advice. It is. But if you're listening to this today and you're applying in round 2, you can't start early, but it's not too late. And Jamie can talk a little bit about her timeline maybe. It's definitely not too late. We can still help you. But, just kind of know, it's a little bit brighter there. Just be realistic about the expectations, right? It is a challenging year. Application numbers are up. More people are applying. And the numbers are raising faster than schools are adding any seats, even for those schools that are adding seats. So, just kind of keep that in mind. So Jamie, maybe I'll let you talk for like a couple minutes or so. Nothing too crazy about your background and as much detail as you want to give us about your experiences, and then we'll go back to some questions and we'll go back to other success stories.
Sure. Thanks, Scott. Hi, everyone. So my name is Jamie. I am a first year at Wharton as well. A little bit about my background. So went to Notre Dame for undergrad, majored in economics and accounting. From there, much like many of the people you'll hear on these calls, I went into consulting. I was at McKinsey for 2 years, doing mostly work in the healthcare space. I did a lot of growth strategy work, org redesign, things like that for major healthcare providers. From there, I decided to take an externship at SoftBank for a year where I worked on the human capital team, working with portfolio companies on a variety of talent-related issues, operational issues, things like that. From there, I came to Scott in mid-December of last year, and in kind of a full panic saying, I wanted to apply in round 2. How could he help me with about 2-3 weeks left before deadlines? Wouldn't necessarily recommend that timeline, but as Scott mentioned, if you're sitting on this call right now and you haven't started yet, it still is possible. Reached out to Scott mid-December with the intent of still applying to 5 schools by round 2. And so in that, worked with Scott for kind of on an accelerated timeline over 3 weeks to really get those applications ready to go by, those early January deadlines. And I would say kind of three main things emerge for me in terms of the value that Scott and his team really add. First off, and I think, this is something that you would likely see if you started the process as late as I did. I think there's a component of just really alleviating some of the stress around the process. When I was looking at this mound of applications that I had in the middle of December, I didn't even know where to start. I had written, half an essay here, half an essay there, but there was really no organized approach to how I was taking on this process. And so I think it's very tactical, and it might seem simple, but just setting you up on a process where you can tackle these applications in a very organized way and really make sure that the applications for each of your schools can be viewed in a holistic manner and really tell a consistent story throughout. So I would say that's point one, and it may seem small, but for me it was a huge value add. I would say the second thing, in terms of goals, a lot of these schools will ask you, what are your short-term goals? What are your long-term goals? And I had a pretty good idea about short-term goals. I intend to go back to consulting following. And while I had a sense of my long-term goals, I didn't really understand, the level of specificity that is important to a lot of these applications. And so Scott really helped me uncover, okay, here's what your long-term goal is, but what does that really mean in practice? How are you going to add value to these companies? What do you specifically see yourself doing in the role you've specified? And that was something that, I'd really never thought of. It's something 3-4 years down the line, or even 5 years down the line from now. And I hadn't taken the time to really dig into what my long-term goals meant in practice. And then I think the last thing, and Parker touched on this a little bit, I didn't have too many extracurriculars, and when sitting down to write my applications initially, I didn't really see a common theme that was kind of emerging throughout my application. And so Scott really helped me to uncover, what are some of the things that tie together my past experiences, both personal and professional, that I can lean on in these applications. And so for me, it ended up being a lot around teamwork and collaboration as a former collegiate athlete. And these were things that I didn't really necessarily see in my own experiences, but they were themes that Scott pointed out to me, and that we were really able to kind of weave through the whole application. So those are kind of my main 3 points that I would touch on. Happy to chat about, getting involved in the process late, developing your short and long-term goals, anything like that, happy to chat about. But yeah, at Wharton now, first year, was also admitted to Booth as well.
Great. Well, Jamie, thank you so much. So we'll go to success story 4. Okay, and now Narina's now here as well. So we'll bring Narina into the stream here. Hi, Narina. Thanks for joining.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me here.
Actually, if you click on the little 3 ellipses, sorry if this is too casual for folks, I'm a casual guy. Click on the little 3 ellipses next to your name and click edit name, and just type your school afterwards.
Oh, okay.
That would be great for folks. So we're in success story 4, which is not Narina. So we'll go over another one, and then we'll get to you afterwards. And then we'll go back to some Q&A as well. So success story 4. This was a guy. I'll say CETOS, because CETOS wouldn't mind. So it was a 3.4 GPA, 750 Gmat, automotive, experience, a very sort of specific background. Wanted to go, or went to a top 30 undergrad school rather. Wanted to go to a really top MBA. We met a while ago, actually. We met at one of the MBA fairs. I do a lot of talks at different fairs. We met at one in Boston, And we did an early planning package. So I helped him specifically with what organizations to get involved in, what to do here and there, and we actually did a lot to change his whole sort of approach there. And some challenges were differentiating kind of male engineer with an average GPA. Now, some details, we focused a lot on self-driving cars. So we worked in a self-driving car company, debate, some volunteer sort of community work. And, the goals were project management and the mobility industry. So also super specific. At one point, we actually got too narrow for the goals. And I said, hold on, let's dial this back a bit. I don't want you to write about 3 jobs that you can have post-MBA. And so, we might have to actually expand the horizon, let's say. And, otherwise, we were just passionate about like cars and transportation. So this was an example where, some people are generalists and they don't know what they're going to write about. And so we have to figure out what are we covering. And some people are like super narrow. So this was a case where my only hesitation going into this was like, are we too narrow, right? Because every extracurricular, so many of the things are focused on cars that I thought, actually, I wonder if this is going to be a little bit too narrow. And so we just tried to beef up everything that we could within the roles that we had. And, at the end of the day, we, like I said, like doubled down on the unique goals. So we didn't try to say, well, I also, I love this, horseback riding, and I helped my uncle at his racetrack or something. We just kind of focused on what we were actually good at. And I think by being really genuine and authentic, it worked out. And this person, also got into Wharton and Kellogg. So that's an example there. He actually might have been here to chat, but wasn't able to join. So that's success story 4. And now, Narina, maybe I'll let you introduce yourself, and you can talk through your sort of background here a bit. And I'll just kind of click through the slides. So just say next slide, and I'll just.
I will let you know. Perfect. Yeah. Hi, everyone. So first of all, I wanted to start by thanking Scott for the opportunity of being here. I'm very happy that I'll get the chance to share my story with you. My name is Narina Daly, and I'm a second-year MBA candidate at Yale School of Management. And before going over my goals and kind of why I decided to go back to school and get an MBA, I thought it would be helpful to share with you my profile. So as you can see, I'm a CPA with 9 years of experience in the financial services. So think of asset management, private equity, real estate. Right before Yale, I was an audit manager at PwC. I was promoted 3 times throughout my careers. I was a top performer 3 out of 3 years when I had manager responsibility. My Gmat was 660. I graduated from University of Maryland at College Park. I was an accounting major. My GPA was 4.0. I was on the dean's list 8 out of 8 semesters while in undergrad. While in undergrad, I was the finance director of Accounting and Business Association. My job was to connect CPA firm with the students on campus. I had 10 plus scholarships that cover 100% of my undergrad tuition. I am Romanian by nationality, born and raised there. I'm fluent in 3 languages, Spanish, Romanian, and English. And as extracurricular activity that I had, I was a VP of Public Relations for Toastmasters. Next slide. Okay. So in my last year at PwC, I had the opportunity to coordinate and promote the implementation of robotic process automation and artificial intelligence on several engagements. And that's how I became passionate about this idea of strategizing the use of cutting-edge technologies to make business processes more effective and efficient. And this prompted me to pursue an MBA with the intention to further explore this intersection between business and technology and build on that strategic mindset that I developed at PwC, basically take the problem solving from accounting and finance to operations in all areas of a business. Next slide. My end goal was to become a chief business officer, eventually a CEO. My vision was to find ways of integrating the cutting edge technologies to improve business processes and ultimately the lives of people and communities in which they live. Next slide. So my MBA journey started in May 2018 when I met Scott. And after a very long decision-making process that took me months, I landed on the 8 MBA programs. I applied in round 2. I got into 5 MBA programs. I got a full scholarship and a 20K stipend from one of the MBA programs, a full scholarship from another one, and then an 80% tuition coverage from another MBA program. Next slide. And here is where my MBA journey ended, or better said, begin. This is Evans Hall, which is the building where Yale School of Management is located. As I said, I'm currently a second year, and I can say that I enjoyed every single moment of my MBA experience, and I couldn't have hoped for a better outcome. And needless to say that I'm grateful to Scott for all the help and support through this process. Thank you. And then the next slide is just another image with the school.
Very, very cool design. You're already marketing for Yale.
Yeah, and then the next one, if you go to the next one, that's another one, and that's.
Oh, I think I removed the.
Oh, you did. It's that one.
But yes, very cool. We'll have to add it in later. Awesome. So yeah, if anyone has any questions, about Yale School of Management, or any questions for Narina, please feel free to ask, and we'll actually we see. We'll go through the last part of the presentation, then we'll go to some Q&A, and then I might just give some other sort of general advice for those of you still listening and watching. So our clients get into all the top schools, right? We had room for some of the logos here, but any school that you're applying to, we have people that we're sending to, and we do have really high success rates. And so what else about what we do? We start, for those of you that weren't here at the beginning of the presentation. We start with early planning. If you're not applying yet, like one of our client examples, and you want to figure out how to perfect your profile between now and when you do apply, we can help you to do that. What things should you do? What things should you not do? Are you in the right job? Do you need to get another job? You can work directly with myself, and we have our former Wharton admissions director who does a lot of early planning work to say, look, if I'm looking at you and thousands of others, here's what I want to see. Wharton and UCLA. Then we have tutoring, so Gmat GRE tutoring. We talked a little bit about that earlier with in-house software we use to guide through the process of modules and thousands of questions, and our folks do extremely well. So we're often the second, third, fourth, even fifth tutoring company that people come to, and pretty much always the last. We have brainstorming sessions where we'll help you to, and this is just a very high-level overview. If you want to learn more, drop me an email, or better yet, visit the website and submit your information. Check out our packages, and you can go into much more details about how we work. But brainstorming session where we're learning about you and talking about your goals and your passions. We figure out what your story is, select the right schools based on personality, fit, career, chances of getting in. We'll do deep editing of the resume and the essays, and that's as much as you need. And we go through a whole project management tool, again, high-level overview. And we have recommendation assistants, so help you to select the recommenders and decide, who you want to ask to write them, but also what they should be writing about, and then interviews. So we have a lot of former interviewers on our team. Folks used to interview at many top schools, and so you always have a couple people that you're working with, your main consultant, and then another main editor. So we have folks top MBA students, graduate professor of English, sort of like Princeton kind of masters in English and folks like that. And so that's the model that gets you the best results at the end. And so if you want to know anything more, this is a cool downloadable. I feel like we have a few of these on our website, personalmbacoach.com/start-sign-up, and that can give you some information. So I'm going to go back to this slide as we go to some Q&A.
All right, great. So thanks everyone for watching, and we'll go over all the questions now. If you don't have questions now, I'll just go over questions that people tend to ask, and that way I think it will really be helpful for you as you're thinking through yourself and your application strategies and this whole process. So we'll go to the questions list here. So here's a question: can a 3.2 GPA with a 770 GMAT get into a top 3 business school? That's a really good question. I'll generalize this a little bit, right? Because I don't know everything about you. So to directly answer you, I would say maybe. I mean, we certainly have folks with high test scores and low GPAs that get into top schools, Harvard and on down. As far as whether you will get in, I'd love to learn a little bit more about you. And so best thing to do would be to jump on our website, www.personalmbacoach.com, submit an inquiry, and that way we can see your resume and some other details to give you a full profile, evaluation. And while you're there, check out our packages. We have some pretty specific offerings, and make sure that it is the right fit for you, your needs, and your budget before submitting an inquiry. And then we'd be happy to chat. The thing about the GPA is it really depends on the school that you're graduating from, right? So for one thing, is it a U.S. school? Have you studied abroad? Are you converting the GPA? You never actually want to convert a GPA, despite what you might hear out there. Unless the school absolutely requires you to convert a GPA, converting a GPA is really not the right thing to do. The West calculator is not very helpful. And so I want to know your school. Are you on a 4.0? Are you on a 10.0 scale? Right? And then how does your number really compare to others in your class? Because sometimes we see people that have, GPAs that are not that great, but for their particular school, it's actually pretty strong. And so then they, get it. So that's the answer there. Let's see. So other questions. Okay. So here's someone who applied in round 1 with 770, a different 770. Work experience of 4 years, oil and gas, procurement engineer, international work experience 30 months, in countries of Saudi Arabia and Nigeria. CGPA was 693 out of 10. I think the question then continues, how long does it take for Booth to review an application? Can we talk about chances, things like that? So application review varies based on the school. So for those of you waiting to hear back, first of all, relax, take a load off, have a bite to eat. If you drink, have a drink. It takes time, right? Sometimes people hear back right away from schools. I should sit higher up so you can see me and the question. Sometimes people hear back, right away from schools. And sometimes it just takes a little bit for the schools to get back. Booth is not one of those schools where, they tell everybody on one exact date. They do have different windows, but they haven't invited anybody yet. So don't worry yet. You'll probably hear back in October, I would say. If you want interview prep, we have former interviewers from all these top schools. So former Booth interviewers and Kellogg and Columbia and Wharton, and the list goes on. But we can certainly see it, working out for somebody like you. And I would just say, sit back and wait at this point. Next question, is it possible to shed some light on interview questions? For instance, what's the best approach to prepare for interview at different schools? So this really varies a lot based on the school, Abdullah. And so thanks so much for that question. When we do interview prep at Personal MBA Coach, one of the reasons why we spend so much time on interview prep, and we have all these former interviewers, is because the process varies quite a bit as you're going from school to school. But I'll give you some generic sort of answers now. Okay, the first thing that you want to think about is telling your why MBA story. So if I had a stopwatch, I would say, okay, let's go. We have 90 seconds. Tell me everything about you and why you want to go to business school in 90 seconds. If you can't do that, that's something you really want to think about. So what's your pitch? What's your elevator pitch? Why is that school the right school for you? Think about some behavioral questions. Tell me about a time when X happened, a time when something good happened, a time when something bad happened, right? And then we go on down the list, and we have a lot more things that you can be thinking about. But if you walk away with 3 things, those are the 3 things that you want to try to perfect. And then, like I said, as you go school by school, there are a lot of nuance things about each school. So here's a question. Will a high GMAT compensate for a mediocre GPA? It certainly can, yeah. And we were talking about that before. I mean, we have folks, getting full rides from schools with GPAs that are really, really low. All right, but how does that happen? Well, maybe we're doing Teach for India or Teach for America. Maybe we really struck a chord with a student or an admissions director. Right? There's always something behind the story. But we have a lot of clients with low GPAs. Very hard to have a low GPA and a low Gmat score. That's pretty tough to overcome. But if you just have one, that's certainly something that you can do. And the other thing is, why did you have that low GPA, right? Was there mitigating circumstance? Was there a death in the family? Right? Health situation? What was the reason why the GPA was low? Have you taken other classes outside separately to compensate for that? At the same time, sometimes I see people get good GPAs and then say, I just finished, HBS Core, right? Something like that. Don't just take classes for the sake of taking classes. If it's going to support you and you're looking to overcome something that's not very strong, then that's the reason why you want to take some of these courses. But the average person does not need to do that, right? So if you studied, you have a okay transcript, okay test score, you don't need to take any of these outside courses, even though people might talk about them quite a bit. Will a great 2+2 HBS essay cover for both low GPA and a 700 Gmat? I would say no. Yeah, just to be very blunt, I would really be surprised if that were to work out. 2+2 is tough, right? The deferred programs are competitive, especially from international markets. There are only so many people that are really getting in every year, and we do a ton of work for deferrals. So if you're looking for deferred applications, definitely check out our website. Have a whole dedicated web page for those who are in college and looking to do deferred. But we haven't really seen anyone get in with a low GMAT and a low GPA to a deferred program, and even to Harvard in general. Honestly, I think that would be pretty tough. Okay, so close an entrepreneurship experience have a negative? Oh, does. Oh, I see. Okay. Sorry, my screen was a little bit. So does an entrepreneurship experience have a negative impact on our application as compared to regular work experience? No, not at all. We work with a lot of entrepreneurs, and people start companies. How do you think all these companies existed today, right? Somebody had to start them at some point. So if you have entrepreneurial experience, it's great because it shows initiative, right? Maybe you raise some funds, maybe you're managing other people. The thing to think about when you're considering entrepreneurship experience is how can you convey to the admissions team what you actually did versus, let's say, if you're working at Tata or General Electric or Bain or BCG or something, right? They'll know those companies and they'll know what those roles are. And they know the promotion paths and the timing involved. So if you're doing something on your own, you just have to go out on a limb and explain the work in more detail. And that's where we can come in. But I would not say it's a negative. No, entrepreneurs can do quite well in this process. Does having a GPA of 3.4 make a huge difference with a 750 GMAT and a strong profile? Yeah. So all these profile questions, I really need to see the details offline because numbers are just numbers, and it's tough to say 3.4 for someone. They might get in, they might get 80,000 in scholarship to Kellogg. I could see that happening with you. But if I don't like the rest of the profile, maybe I don't even see you getting accepted to the school. So the one thing I can say is that 3.4 will not keep you out of schools alone, but everything else in the profile, certainly could. So it really depends on everything else. But no, 3.4 is fine. You're in range, and 750 is a strong test score. Okay, so is it a good idea to email this? Be careful about contacting schools. That's my first. I didn't even read the rest of the question, but people tend to over contact. But let me read the rest of the question. Is it a good idea to email the school and show my interest after you submitted your application? Absolutely not. No, bad idea. Do not email the school after you submitted the application. This, falls under the sort of pretext of too much content and too much contact, and people tend to contact too much. Don't ever add an admissions director on LinkedIn, things like that. There's a process, right? And you should follow the process. So if the process is submit the application and wait for interview, follow that process. A lot of our clients say, well, now what can I do to, quote, improve my chances of getting in? The answer is nothing. And anything you can do would actually decrease your chances of getting in because it shows that you are not following the process. You don't have a sense for what should be done and shouldn't be done, and they're evaluating that. So we have former admissions directors on our team. So I have Nicole Shea on the team who spent the last 6 years at Columbia. I should have led with that. And I hear a lot of stories of people that over contact, right? And you don't want to be one of those people. So if you're talking to somebody in an info session, you have some great questions, perfectly fine, and actually recommended. But afterwards, leave the contact aside. Okay, so what is HPS Core? So HPS Core, it's basically, now it's HPS Online. They keep changing the name. It's some business classes that you can take online as a way to overcome a low GPA. So that's a good one. Berkeley Extension, Berkeley and UCLA also have great extension courses. And so those are things that are good. If you think that your academic performance is not very strong and you want to try to offset that by showing your abilities in some courses online, those are some that you can take. Applied to INSEAD, Ross, Booth, Tuck, and now be applying to CBS, Kellogg, and Wharton. Ambitious, can you share some ideal profiles for these top schools? Well, you heard from a few profiles today, right? As far as other ideal profiles, that's a tough question to answer, honestly. And I'd love to give you answers, because the more I tell you, the more likely you are to sign up with us. But to be honest, there's so many different profiles that it's really tough to say, like, here's one ideal profile for Columbia. A lot of this depends on the year, right? What are they looking for? Do they have more of one person than they need, or are there certain types of profiles that they're looking to kind of beef up in this year? Okay, so please suggest good extracurriculars that could help for career in consulting. So when you think about extracurriculars, you want to think about impact, right? So where is the organization yesterday? What have you done today? And where are they going tomorrow? You want to have this story. When you're filling out an application, they have like 2 lines, maybe 3 lines. Right? It's a short amount of space to say, what did Scott actually do for this? So take, when I was in high school, I don't know why I thought about this now, but I was involved in SAD, Students Against Drunk Driving, right? So, okay, great organization, but what did Scott actually do? Like, why does anybody care to look at Scott based on the work? So as far as good extracurriculars, it's really leadership. There are thousands of good extracurriculars. It would be a hard question to answer. It's, what's that story? How does it compare to the rest of your profile? So we actually have this whole early MBA planning package, which is like a couple hours of strategic guidance and advice for how you can improve yourself between now and when you're submitting the applications. And so figuring out that element of personal story and personalization is super crucial as we're considering extracurriculars. I know I didn't answer the question, and apologies. I'm not a politician, but that is a tricky one. So here's one. Can you get recommendation letters from professors? No, you cannot get anything from college, any professor at all, unless you're doing work with that professor now. So if you did, a class with the professor in school, and now you're working for them in their like consulting firm, that's different. But otherwise, no, you cannot get anything from college, unless you are a deferral applicant, and then you can. So it depends, in what bucket you're in. And we get a lot of questions, so I forget where you were. Okay, so I've not had any promotions over the last 5 years, but we'll be receiving one next month. You think that would impact the? Well, I need to know a little bit more about your company, right, and your performance. What's the salary like? Are they promoting other people? We have folks that come from jobs where they just don't get promoted. And if nobody has gotten promoted in the last 5 years, then perhaps that's fine. But if you're in an organization where promotions would be expected, right, and other people are getting promoted and you're not, that's where I'm going to, take a pause. Can civil engineering, good at CADs with 2 years of work experience, preparing for Gmat, chance of getting all these chances questions, shoot me an email with your resume. And that way I'll be able to give you a little bit more details once I see more about you than just a few points here. But definitely glad you're here, and thanks for expressing interest. Can you mention a high chess rating in the application? Yeah, why not? Look, they like all different things about a person. So if you are one of the world's leading bartenders or musicians. I mean, why not, right? So I think it's always going to add to the dimension of your profile. How much can Gmat score should you target for certain schools? So I would say, without knowing everything about you, try to target maybe 20 to 30 points above the average for that particular school. But as I know more about you and your background and demographics and leadership, that number might change. Maybe I would say just average is fine, or maybe even below average in some cases. Join late. Yeah, so we did go over the profiles, but the good news is this will all be sitting on YouTube, so you can watch this again later on. So yeah, so we're done with the profiles at this point, but you'll be able to watch that recorded later. And we also have some videos on our website. So of course, subscribe to Gmat Club if you haven't already. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Personal MBA Coach, and we have a lot of videos on our website with other just character profiles. We have a lot of success stories and testimonials and things like that. So you can certainly hear from others. Okay, so continue. All right. If two people have the same Gmat, let's say 730, nearly similar profile, but different country of origin like India and the US, would it create any difference, opinion, in the admission? Yeah, so the answer is it could, right? And it's not that any one country is better than another, or they prefer one over another, or anything like that. It's really just they're looking to create a well-rounded class. And if you have, let's say for the sake of argument, that the top 20 applicants happen to be from country XYZ, they can't take all of them because they won't be very dynamic in the classroom. They'll all have similar experiences and backgrounds. So I think country of origin is important for that particular reason. That's why if you are from a country that has a lot of people applying, you might need to get a higher test score to try to rise above everybody else, because they do want a variety of backgrounds in the school. Who should get recommendation letters? Who should write recommendation letters? Well, you want recommendations to come from people that know you well. So these would be like bosses, former bosses. It doesn't have to be the executive, senior, vice president of the world. Someone who's going to write a great letter and have that detail and clarity there. Okay. How do top schools take international candidates with more than 15 years of experience into their full-time MBA? They don't love to do that, to be totally blunt with you. I mean, more than 15 years of experience, they're really thinking about an executive program. Now, could they take you for a standard full-time 2-year? Maybe, but I would really want to evaluate you carefully. So I would say send over your information. But the thing is, the good news is you have these executive full-time programs as well. So it's a full-time MBA, but it's also at the executive level. And that might be the right program for you so that you can learn as much as you can from other people that are just frankly more experienced in the world than someone who's 27, 28 years old. How much does work experience matter during the MBA applications? Work experience is pretty important. You're applying to business school after all. So it is important to see what you've done at work. And it's number of years, it's strength, it's leadership. So I would say that's one of the most important things when you're applying. Does getting Fulbright help you? Yes, absolutely. Fulbright is great. So if you can get it, fantastic. Yeah. So we have a lot of Fulbright, folks that we work with, and so that's definitely a positive. Okay, looks like I have time for a couple more questions before we wrap up here. So work for a local construction firm, does not working in a big corporation hinder the chances of getting into a good school? I would say it's a factor, but maybe if you're working for a smaller firm, then you're taking more responsibility. You have more initiative and leadership. So that's certainly something to consider as a positive. Okay, and last question that we'll take today is, should I work on developing a neutral English accent? No, I don't think so. I mean, look, I haven't spoken with you, so I can't say how you come across, but half of our clients come from around the world and people of all kinds of accents. So I think as long as it's something that is understandable, I wouldn't worry about it too much. If you're concerned, then feel free to, record a video, send it to me, and I'll give you my opinion. So one more that just came in. Fall or spring admission, which one is better? Just whichever one is going to be best for you and your life. I would say that's most important. So again, I'm Scott Edinburgh. Our website is personalmbacoach.com. Feel free to reach out if you want to hire a consultant and you want to explore what we do and to see how we lead in a lot of different respects in this industry. We're pretty blunt, pretty direct. We don't take everybody as clients. So if you really want, this objective feedback as far as what your profile is good about, what your profile lacks, feel free to reach out and let us know. Thanks again. Thanks Gmat Club for hosting us. Best of luck and